Welcome back to the Roundtable on the IH Sports Network. We are live from El Rey, and it is time, as always, to end things with our Legends of the Game, presented by the Black Cat Antiques and Collectibles on Main Street. And Tim, last week we had part one of our interview with Sparky Woods. This week we've got part two pre-recorded from Chapel Hill, from the stadium at Chapel Hill at University of North Carolina, which the name of it just escaped me. As we were making the trip, Kenan Stadium, right? As we were making the trip over, you and I were talking about sitting down with Sparky Woods. And first of all, we got there a couple hours early, as you mentioned last week. And of course, he came right in and was very gracious with his time. But I said, how long are you going to talk to him for? I'm thinking maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And you said maybe 2 hours if he would give you that much time. And I got to be honest with you. In my mind, I'm thinking he's busy. Had a game coming up at Miami 2 days later. Just not sure he's going to give you that much time. He gave you all the time that you needed. And so that's why we've got a part one and a part two of this. You guys talked for an hour and a half, as it turned out, and actually longer if you include the breaks and everything else. But Sparky Woods was very generous with this time with you.
Absolutely. And, the whole way home I was thinking of questions I should have asked and could have asked. And as you'll hear at the end of the interview, he's open to maybe some more information later on down the road. I mean, I think we just barely scratched the surface of basketball. And he has a great history in basketball there too. But one of the things I did want to mention going into this segment, and I told Jason Terry I was going to apologize to him because sitting there listening to Coach Woods go on about his middle school experience, and I didn't think to mention the middle school experience currently going on for the Oneida middle school teams. And then I thought about how this ties together. Coach Terry and his team, they're going to play a playoff game this Thursday night, and then if they can win that, they'll play for a championship, and he's been very successful. Prior to him, it's just been one successful coach after another in that middle school level. And sometimes people think, well, that's just middle school. But you can hear in Coach Woods, middle school, very important. And it was one of the most important things to him. So you go backwards from Coach Terry, you had Heath Sexton, and you had Kevin Terry, you had late Jared Henry, and you had Bill Hall, and you had Robert Wright. And Robert Wright, a dear friend of Coach Woods. And so I told Jason Terry I was going to apologize to him because Coach Woods emphasized his middle school experience and the middle school coaches so much that I felt like I should have pursued that a little bit more. But last week was really good, I thought. And if you didn't get a chance to watch that, I hope you do go back and watch it. But tonight, I've told folks I feel like is even better. Coach Woods, he's going to tell you some stories. There's some humor in the stories. There's some touching parts in the stories. But each time he begins to spin a tale, you can tell he has taken himself back to that moment and taking you there with him, whether it's something humorous or something that made him nervous. I'm excited for folks to see this and for more folks to hear Coach Woods talk about more folks from the area and what they meant to him. And again, just want to thank him for giving us the time. And we thank the Black Cat for the Legends segment that has been, I think, one of our bigger surprises this year in what it's meant to folks. And so hopefully that continues. And I think you'll enjoy this part two with Coach Sparky Woods tonight. So absolutes are tough, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But I do want to ask the question, drawing back and looking at the years of playing football at Oneida, do you have an absolute best memory, and do you have a worst memory? And you can choose whichever order you want to send those in, or to refuse that, and we'll go on to something else. It's your choice.
I'm sure one of those losses had to be my worst memory, I guess. Usually probably the state semifinals where we'd lose those because we were just one game away from playing for the state championship. And I'm not sure I really understood the magnitude of that either at the time. One thing we do as coaches is we try to get players to take one game at a time. And I literally did that as a player. Every Friday night was that's the biggest thing going on until next Friday night, you know. And so I don't know that I remember having, we can beat this team, now we're going to play that team. It didn't matter if we were playing Sunbright or whoever it was, it was a big deal. So I literally probably saw the semifinals as another game. And big game, important, but just another game and all. So I don't know that I realized how, dang on, we were only one game away till even later years. But Probably one of those losses had to do with it as much as anything. I did think it was sad when the county came together with Scott County High School. We did kind of break up. Some kids had to go to different schools, and I kind of thought that was sad because one great thing about Oneida is you get to know everybody at school and friends, and so that's kind of sad, that part. Happy, sad, I guess. But as far as things I remember, truthfully, I think that I remember I was so proud of Steve Phillips was really a dear friend of mine, and there was a great player at Alcoa named Albert Davis, and he was a great player, signed with Tennessee, and he and Steve were like every Friday night. Then on Saturday morning, now Albert was leading the state in scoring, or Steve was, and then the next week it may change. And I remember it was the last game of the season, and I remember I got in trouble with Coach Daniel about this, but they had a kind of a rain out or something that Alcoa played on Thursday night, and they won, and he scored, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 touchdowns or something. Albert did. He was a great player. But anyway, I kind of knew going in what Steve had to do to win the state scoring championship. And we had a little old option play where we'd fake it to the fullback and keep it outside, and it was a pitch keep off of the support player. And of course, Coach Daniel was a good coach. He told us, pitch it whenever you can, because we want to get it to Steve, you know. But sure enough, if I'd been playing defense, they took Steve. They were going to make me run the ball, and I don't blame them. But anyway, I broke loose, and we were running, and we were way ahead of both of them, and it was in the 4th quarter, and I remember, and he was right there, and I remember pitching it to him right before we crossed the goal line. So he scored. It was like a 70-yard run, but he scores on the last 10 yards. But rightly so, he was the best player in the state, I thought. But he ended up being the state leading scorer. So we've had a lot of fun memories about that. And I remember Coach Daniels. You could have fumbled the ball. You could have pitched the ball. We were probably ahead. I don't know how many touchdowns, but he was jumped my tail real good for not keeping the ball and running in the end zone with it. But anyway, it worked out.
And I'm going to come back later to Robert Wright just a minute, but I do want to interject something here because you're telling a story, an on-field story, and he told me that you might deny this or at least deny the memory of it, but he told me that as an 8th grader, it was a very close game. I believe he said he was 8th grade, and he was with the varsity, and there was a close game. I think he said it was 6-0, and coach sent him in. It was late in the game, just a 6-0 game. And he remembers this way that you called the timeout to question that substitution.
Oh, I don't remember that. I wouldn't admit to it if I did, I guess. Maybe. Robert remembers everything pretty good and usually he's right. So I'm probably guilty of doing something like that. But I would have been careful if I had, because I respected and scared to death of Coach Daniel. I would have never done anything he didn't think I should do, I think. So.
I mean, that would be 2 times you crossed in there. That's hard to
yeah, that's
think about,
pushing
right?
it. Yeah.
Now, he also tells me that when I was talking with him, that he's never seen anybody, and it's it's hard to pick up sitting here talking with you and enjoying these memories, but he said there's nobody he knows that's more competitive. You talked about, I asked you about competitions at home and competitiveness. He says that if you're about to play checkers against someone, he would picture you sitting down across and rolling your sleeves up, getting ready to play checkers. Is that something that wanes over time, or is that still right there, or what do you think?
I don't know if I am that. I felt like Robert is. I felt like everybody that I played with was competitive. If you played against Steve Phillips at anything, you or Mike Baker or David Sexton or Tony or Robert, any of you, they were going to try to win. It's just, I thought it was expected of you, So if I am competitive, I think again it comes from environment at Oneida, and from Coach Williamson at a young age, and then Coach Daniel at a later age. It was almost, I wasn't going to let them down. Or I felt like I let the whole town down if we didn't win, you know, or something. And so I never felt like this is what I want, or this is what I always, it was always a we, us, team thing. And I think anybody will do more for others than they will for themselves. They'll quit on themselves far quicker than they will on other people, you know. So it just wasn't an option, you know. And I loved Coach Daniel. He was great. Coach Daniel was single most of his life, and he kind of getting off the subject, but it kind of reminded you of my relationship with him. He got married, and he married this lady whose husband, she was a widow. Her husband had been killed in Vietnam, and she had 2 daughters, or 3 maybe. One daughter named Kendra. She's cute she could be, and we all thought she was cute. So, and we used to have these like little dances after the basketball game, sock hops, and Kendra would say, you know, ask Dad if you could walk me home. You could see his porch light from the gym, but I was scared. I said, I can't ask him that. She said, tell him you'd like to walk me home after the dance. And Kendra, I just can't do it. I'm afraid of him. And so she come in. She actually had her mother, who's the only person I ever saw Coach Daniel afraid of was Kendra's mother. But anyway, she said, "Listen, Mom's talked to him. He knows you're going to come and ask. This is the last dance, last game, and said you've got to go in there and tell him you'd like to walk me home after the game." I'm literally, you could see the porch light from the gym. It wasn't like it's going to be a long walk, but anyway, I got up my nerve, and I remember going in. He was sitting watching film. That's when the old 60 minutes, and he had a tape. They used to buy tape in a tube. It'd come in a long tube, and he would chew tobacco and spit in that tube, in that tape tube. And he was in there, and I said, now, I've been with him now for 4 years, and we'd won all these games, and I'd been his quarterback. And I mean, if he said jump, I'd jump, you know, whatever he said. And I remember saying, "Coach, what is it?" And I said, I need to just ask you. He said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Coach, you know, there's this dance tonight." And he said, "What do you want, Sparky? What is it?" He said, "I'm busy." I said, "I was wondering if it was okay if I walk Kendra home after the dance." He said, "Hell no, don't ask me again." I was out of there. But that's what I remember. Well, eventually, I think here he came and found me and said, "You can walk her home if you want to," or something. But anyway, it worked out. But I scared him, you know.
Did you feel like you'd been set up?
Yeah, you know. So, but it was. I never could have had a better experience playing for anybody than those guys.
Do you feel like your coaching was a meld of all of those that you experienced at that time?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I've been asked a lot of times who's influenced your life the most, and my brother is a great influence. He better coach than me. He's won so many games and all. And then, you know, I've had a chance to, you know, I'm working for a Hall of Fame coach now, Mac Brown, and had worked for him for years before that. I worked for Pete Carroll and George Welsh, and I've been around some good ones. Bill Battle was a great football coach, but when somebody says who's had the most influence on you, I really have to go all the way back to Blackie and then Ben. Because they really made you what you are. And then, you know, you might learn a little bit more how to run this type of offense or defense or something, but they're the ones that embedded into me team first, school, teammates, and that kind of stuff.
I have a couple more of these almost absolutes, but you choose how you want to answer these.
Okay.
But what would you say? I'm intrigued because I assisted middle school basketball for a short time for a gentleman,
Awesome.
just basically to try to help him work with the varsity while I kept the others busy. But I'm a teacher as well, which, as you said,
Awesome.
it equals that. But I think there's a lot of things that people who haven't coached, you know, just because they haven't done it, can't understand. So a few questions on that, if I could. One is, in the years you've been a coach and seen coaching, what's something that has changed the most, and then what's something that just hasn't changed at all?
Good question. I've been doing it now. This is, I guess, 40-something years for me and everything, so of these games. But I remember when we went from blocking where you couldn't use your hands to using your hands. And then because of that, on defense, you could shed the block and make the tackle. But since you can use your hands, it kind of legalized holding. So you might be able to shed the block, but the backs are so good they run before you can get them and stuff. So the changing of using your hands created the box count. Now you hear about it when you watch TV. They're filling the box. They're outnumbering you, so it's hard to run the ball or something. So that became, and then from there became, okay, if we're going to fill the box, we're going to have to pressure the quarterback, and then bump and run coverage probably outside. So all of that is kind of matriculated through football, I think. And then probably the biggest change that's happened, other than the rules like that, has been gloves. Is that right now with these gloves, every game you see great athletes who are great athletes, but they one-handed catch here or something. It's a big assist in catching the ball. So therefore, I think offensive football, his scoring's up, those things. I think gloves has helped people catch the ball so much more, and that's some things that I've seen in it. The thing that never changes is it's still 11, and it's still a team sport. It's the greatest team sport for me because it's hard to get two people to do the correct things. To try to get 11 to do it on the same play is really hard. I love football because you could take a seventh grader that had breast and they can play football. There's a place for them. You could be big and heavy and can't do anything else maybe, or you could be a little tiny guy that probably can't. There's a place in football for you, and so I think that's one of the things that I see is not changed. It's that if you want to play, you can play this sport, and it takes courage. You've got to be willing to run into people and stuff, which is not always the case for a lot of people. But I think it hasn't changed, and I think the best. It's not the best players that always win. It's the best team. It's the ones that play together the best and stuff. And we've got this quarterback here now that's amazing, this Drake May kid, and I just love him. He's just everything you want. He's humble. And he can throw the ball and see, and he's 6'5", and he's just a pro football player, future pro football player, but he still he's the best team guy we got. He knows everybody on our team. He knows the girls that give him the water. He's just a great person.
A leader.
Yeah, he's a great leader. And so it's why at 68, almost 69 years old, I love coming in here and be around guys like him.
This may be too hypothetical, but let me try to set this up, because you know so many coaches. Of coaches you've observed but don't know, because the correct answer of all coaches is Mac Brown right now. Okay, we're going to just say that. But is there, if you had a child or a friend said, "Who should my child play for?" Of coaches you don't actually personally know but you've observed, is there somebody that you look at and you really admire what they're doing?
Belichick, I think that he wins every year enough to where whenever he drafts, it's 28, 29, 30 or something before he gets to his pick, yet he still continues to win. And I don't even know him. I've met him twice, and when I was at Alabama, we went up and visited with him, and he came in there, and talk football, loved talk football, but I knew his father actually pretty good, Steve Belichick. Steve was a Navy graduate and stuff, and actually had been around him some and gone to the convention, and he was at the airport. I gave him a ride, and so we talked, and then he would check on me like every year and stuff, but he's dead now, Steve is, but I think it's hard to argue with Coach Belichick what he's accomplished. He's kind of a Vince Lombardi of my lifetime anyway.
So, similar to the high school question, a best coaching memory, a worst coaching memory in your order, you choose.
I guess I have really been blessed. I've had lots of those, good and bad, I think. Probably when I went to, probably the best time in my life was the years I was at Appalachian State, because they had not done well. They had not finished as high as second. And when I went there, they were kind of laughing at us. They would, do y'all wear shoes up there? And is it Appalachian State or is it Appalachian State? And we kind of, timing worked out. We got it going, and we won a lot of games. And Al, look what they've continued to do. Great people. And so I feel pretty proud of that. But single game, I guess when I went to South Carolina, it was probably the worst timing to go there. Sure. I don't know if you would remember this, but they had a steroid scandal, and the coach had just died, and they actually hired me in March, so they had signed 25 kids, and out of that, maybe one or two played.
Sports Illustrated articles splashed everywhere.
Yeah, you remember that. Well, great. Anyway, so it was probably the worst time to go, but at 35 years old, how do you turn down that opportunity? So I took it, knowing that it was probably going to be hard. But Clemson, on the other hand, was roaring. They were just coming off a national championship. In fact, the first college game I ever coached in as a head coach, I was at App State then, and we played the defending national champion, Clemson, in the first game, and they beat us pretty good. But anyway, we worked hard, and we had a good plan, and we went to Clemson and beat Clemson. And I thought we'd done something. We'd turned this thing around pretty good, and I remember that victory being probably the most satisfying win that I can remember being a part of. The worst one, probably for me, was when I was at South Carolina. We had beaten Tennessee in Columbia. It's the first time, which was a big win. It's the first time South Carolina had ever beaten them, I think, and. I think they fired Coach Majors the week after that and not that was good, but anyway, we had a big win there. The next year, we came to Knoxville, and we were kind of lame, and they were roaring, and they beat us really bad. And I knew going home that would probably. We had a brand new athletic director, brand new press. I told my wife, I think this will probably, and our team really didn't perform like I would have wanted it to. We weren't competitive against Tennessee, and that was the saddest one that I'd been a part of. I had a lot of losses and a lot of wins, but that was the one that I remember feeling the worst about.
You mentioned it's kind of a bookend almost, because your first coaching job ended when Johnny Majors was hired.
That's right.
At Tennessee, correct?
That's right.
And then so.
Yeah, I remember he came to Tennessee, and Coach Battle, who gave me my first job, was fired. I loved Coach Battle. He was great. And I remember Coach Majors came in, and he actually had somebody else tell me that we went through spring practice, and I wanted to stay because I was a fan more than anything. And he said, the other guy came in and said, coaches thinks you ought to probably go. He's got somebody who wants to hire you. I was a graduate assistant or something. Well, so I went to Kansas with the the defensive coordinator who I worked for there at Tennessee, he'd gone to Kansas, and he called me and said, "Hey, come out here." And I'd never been west of the Mississippi River, so I remember calling my mother and say, "Mom, I've taken the job." And she said, "Well, that's good, son." And I said, I'm going to Kansas." And she said, "Well, that's great. Will you be home this weekend?" And she really had no idea. I said, "Maybe Christmas, but I don't think this weekend anyway." So, but that was kind of a coincidence that happened. And you're right. It turned out later that we ended up, our game may have made the decision to fire coach and everything. It's funny how life is. Right. You know, I remember when Coach Majors came here, a funny story. He just got there and he said, "Coach," he didn't know who I was. "Coach, go down and get a bus. We're all going to go down. It's snowing. It was the wintertime. We were recruiting. He just gotten hired. And I went and got a van, and we got all the coaches loaded up in it, and we went down and we climbed all the way to the top of Neyland Stadium. And he was going to buy new uniforms, and you know, I grew up in Oneida, and I played Johnny Majors when I was a kid, when he was a single wing tailback. So I didn't want to change anything about Tennessee. That's, you know, as my school at the time. And so, but I remember being up there around all the coaches, and they were saying, we had one guy down there that had on orange helmet, orange shirt, and orange pants. And I remember we all said, "Oh gosh, his number is 66." He said, "I hope we don't pick that." Said, "Looks like a Halloween costume or something." And here, old stupid me was. I was participating in it too. I said, "Why would we change it? You know, that's the uniform." So anyway, Coach Majors is down there. He gets on. He said, "How does this one look?" We'd all just wave because you know how high it is in Neyland Stadium. So anyway, he said, "I'm coming up there." So he came upstairs, and he walked in. I don't know why he looked past those other 15 coaches. He looked right at me and said, "Hey, you like 66?" Well, I just been telling everybody I didn't like it. And I said, "Well, I don't like it much, Coach." He said, "Well, your ass don't matter anyway." He said, I said, "You're right." Well, and you know, not to be revengeful in any way, because I know Johnny now, and he's been good to me, and I like him fine and stuff, but I thought years later I did matter when they brought him in there and did to him what happened to us all eventually in this coaching business. So
you're leading me to my next question.
Okay.
Because again, I barely coached, right? Just a few years at a small level, but I watch coaches that are friends of mine and the impact that people just don't see. In family, and you mentioned your wife, and I don't want to get too personal. You do whatever you feel comfortable with the question, but what's the hardest part about a family relationship while coaching?
Well, I think that it's harder on the families than it is on you, because you could go do something about it. If you get beat and they fuss at you or say things, but they can't. You know, they just got to sit there and listen to it. Right. And such. I remember when we were in South Carolina, my wife's pretty tough, and she knows if we're doing right, if we're doing wrong, and whatever happens, happens. But she's a really good coach's wife. We moved a bunch of times, and she takes those children and finds that church and finds that school and gets them going and all that. But my son became a coach, so I mean she's all about helping kids and stuff. But I remember they were getting mad at us at South Carolina, and somebody had bought one of those planes that flew fire Sparky over the stadium and all that a couple of times and everything. But and then a funny story. I got up one morning and we had lost. It was the last game. We lost to Clemson or something, and it hit on the front page. But actually, it was really funny. But it had a homeless person stand in front of Williams-Brice Stadium. It was a cartoon. They draw. It said, "I'll coach for food," and for some reason that hurt her feelings. She was crying and all upset about that and everything. But I think that, and I can remember we were at Virginia. We had. First game we played Auburn, and we lost at the end of the game to Keough Spikes intercepted one of our passes and ran that thing in the end zone and beat us. But we were riding home, and my daughter was like in the first grade, and my daughter's awesome. And I looked over and she's crying, and I thought, honey, we got to do recruit or something like that. And she said, I don't want to move again. I said, I realized then that when you're coach's family, you understand the importance of winning and losing a lot and everything. So, but she's great, and I can remember that. It's harder on them than it is on people doing the coaching.
Is it hard watching your son? Is the offensive coordinator at Southern Methodist?
Yeah, they got me last night. You know, funny you ask, because I felt so bad. They really had a good plan, and they ended up getting beat in the second half. And I'm thinking, dog, I've been doing this stuff for 40-something years, and I got to worry about his, you know. And of course I do. He's got 4 children and another one on the way. And I said, listen, they're all girls but one. I said, you got to send them kids to school. But yeah, I feel bad for him, but I'm proud of him. You know, gosh, and it's really, he's done so much. He's a lot better coach than I was when I was his age and stuff. And he, you know, too, there was a time in my life where I could have really helped him a lot. Right now, not so much, because I'm kind of in my latter years. I'm not a head coach now and stuff. So he's kind of learned this all on his own, you know. So, yeah, those are the good memories. I'm proud of him for it, but I suffered last night because I hated they lost, and I'm thinking, what am I doing worried about them now? So,
and some people say that things are, I don't know if the word worse is right, but more intense with grandchildren. How are your grandchildren, and how's that go?
I tell you what, I like grandchildren. Now, I'm a good grandfather because I just let them do anything you want to. You know, my son says, Dad, listen, they ain't going to remember me saying no. They're going to remember me saying yes, anything they ask. So he's got beautiful little children, and he's got a great wife, too. And so we're fortunate about that. But, yeah, I never thought I'd be one of those, but I'm a big-time grandfather. I like that.
So it's his job to do the discipline for them.
Yeah.
You've done your job on that.
Well,
him, and he's to pass that on. That's not your job.
That's right. You're good advice. I hear you.
So one more of these questions that just came to my mind, and you do with it what you will, but for someone who has never coached, is there anything that you feel like you just can't get across to that person that hasn't coached, that they just can't understand about a coach? Well,
you know, trust me, I've really been blessed in my life, and look what I'm doing now. You know, I've kind of got a retirement job really here, and it's Mac's great to me, and I get to be around these kids all the time. We get on the plane tomorrow to fly to play Miami and down there, and it'll be fun. Watch these kids do good and stuff, and he lets me be a part. He lets me help. I got some responsibility that's pretty good, but I think that the one thing that's kind of hard for people, like when people want to come and visit us, they want to come like during football season. I'm glad for them too, because that's good, you know. But it should be fun and stuff. But really, it's the first time to come for me, you know, because you spend your whole year, you got 12 opportunities or something to go out there and put it out there. I'd rather come in the summertime when we can go watch, do something else. But I think that I have to remind myself that to them, they have a job doing whatever they're doing, doctor, lawyer, merchant, thief, or something, and they go to the ball game to have fun, relax, and have fun. And for us, it's such a you know, that you either win or lose, you're going to move in this business probably, you know. So, and that's not really fair a lot of times to your kids and your wife and stuff. So, trying to keep it fun is not an easy thing to do. You got to try to keep it fun, and about the only way I realize you can have fun, and maybe I learned this at Oneida too, is win. When you win, it's fun. Yeah. When you lose, it's not. You know, so it's the biggest thing I think.
Just to kind of wrap back around, Coach. Of course, we follow Oneida. every week. We've been able to do that for years and enjoyed that. And I know, can't imagine, as you mentioned, during football season, the busiest time of the year, have you been able to stay in touch with what the Oneida football team does through this time? And if so, how do you do that? Who's your informant? What's your source? What do you do?
You know, Facebook now, and you got some sources like social media, and you can find out about it, you know, and stuff. But so I try to do that just to keep up with it. What's happened to me a little bit is, and this is not, you know, my whole life I grew up in Oneida, so nothing takes the place of that. But moving around, so maybe we've acquired so many friends. And, you know, I have a son coaching, so I've got so many of coaching friends of mine that are coaching at this school or that school. So I spend my whole day trying to figure out where all my friends, where they won or lost and everything too. But so yeah, and then I try my best. I got to know Coach Lambert pretty good. He and my brother were really good friends, and I went to school with Tony, his uncle, and everything. But so I was a little closer then, and Robert was coaching there then. Robert would keep me up to date on who's doing what and kids, and I hear from some, not as much because I've been gone so long and everything, and most of my family now is kind of passed. So sometimes I get to Morristown and don't ever get on over to Oneida because my sister lives there and stuff. But yeah, I'm really interested in it, and I'd do anything I could to try to. They had like a 100-year deal and asked me to come back and speak, and that was probably the most honored I'd ever been. This is a real honor for you to come and take your day, drive all the way over here and do this, and so it's a real honor for me about that. I do love Oneida, and I do love the people of Oneida, and I think that it's got an unbelievable history. You know, largest county in the state, and probably the smallest population-wise, and just tough people. You know, good people, but tough people. And I can remember growing up those mining accidents and children's dads and those, you know. So I really do have it, although I don't have the relationship, keep up with them like I used to have, because I don't have some nephew playing or cousin playing there or something like that. And it's spread out a little bit. So I do keep up with them. I know that they have good years. I'm sad when I see that they maybe didn't win, but I'm always happy when there's always a lot more of those than there are the other. Proud of what they continue to do. I'm proud of the pride that they have. And that school is great, and the town, and that old football field is super. And I think that I'm always interested in what they do. I wouldn't say I get up first thing Saturday morning to see what their score was, but I usually get to it. And my brother he keeps up with it as well, and we talk once a week. So, what'd you hear about Oneida? Well, Coach Lambert said this, or now Coach May, this is happening. And dear friend I have is Robert Wright there, and so he's been great to keep up with, and especially interested when he was, because I know what he's doing. He's making little people better, big people, you know.
Let me get 3 of your choice and 3 of my choice that I want to, and I want to start with you. 3 non-football people from Oneida that you just want to throw out there and mention. And I, as you're thinking about that, if you want this to be one of your choices, that's fine. But I watched an interview that had been taped with you not too long ago, and you mentioned working for some extra money at George Roark's station.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that wasn't recruiting money to keep you at Oneida or anything like that. No, but you know, just there's 3 people that maybe you could just mention that weren't football related necessarily, but that bring Oneida to mind to you.
You know, there is so many. It's going to be impossible for me not to forget, you know, somebody that's really made an impact on my life, I'm sure. I go back to where we would practice ball, and then I would walk down from the school down to the corner where 27 bends, down there where the service station used to be, and I would hitchhike home. And there was this guy, I don't even know his last name, but his first name was Casey, and he would pick me up almost every day and take me home, and I named my son Casey. only because I remember this guy would time it up so he could give me a ride home. George Roark, you mentioned, me and anybody else that wanted to could work for him. You could wash cars or something, and he would bark at you while you were doing it, but he always paid you, and he was make sure you what else you need. He was just a do-gooder in that town for everybody. So you remember people like Joe Cross, who's such a dear, loyal friend. Mike Baker comes to my mind. Mike will call me to tell me that Chuck is sick, and he would, just keeps me up to date on what's going. Love him very much, Of course, keeping up with Steve's wife, Jane, and Heath, her son and daughter, Lee Ellen, and all. But, I think those are names that come to my mind right now. Most of the ones that had the greatest influence on me have passed and all. So their families or something. I remember, Bill Dunlap, who's actually a first cousin of mine, but I could call Bill anytime and he would, whatever he could do, I love him a lot. And he lost his brother, now he lost his mother, so we're all at that age. But that's the way life is. But there's just so many people I admire. Brother Kazee, who was a pastor there for so many years, and his daughter was probably one of the best basketball players ever played at Carson Newman, much less Oneida. Just
the softball field's named after.
How about that? Should be. There's so many fantastic people. You and I were talking about Eamon Lay, and we were talking about Mr. West, and just people who, they loved me when they had no reason to. So great people.
So three, I want to mention up to you, and then I want to start with you were just peripheral to Oneida by this time, but Coach Jim May came along in the early '80s, provided a state championship run for the Indians, and a couple of other semifinal appearances. Just got right there, and his son Jimmy now coach. Talk a little bit about the May family.
Well, I got to know Jimmy Sr. A little bit, and it opened arms. Come in, Coach. Anything I can do, and you mean so much to this town, and so here's a guy that came in. I relate him a lot to Coach Blackie Williamson. Blackie was from Lenore City, I think, and just came up there. I took a coaching job, and then just became principal of elementary school, community. Just made it all better. I see Coach May is the same way, just came in, and now he's beloved by so many people there. Most of his stories that I've heard either from Robert or people like that. But certainly look what he accomplished there. Now his son following in his footsteps. So, as an alumnus of Oneida, I couldn't be more proud of our coach right now. Who he is. I know what he's doing. It's right. I loved Coach Lambert before him, and such. And Robert. So I'm probably not there to know enough about the bad, because I choose to see it. There's not much, in my opinion. I see all the good that comes from there. I think people that ask me where I'm from, I'm always proud to say I'm on Tennessee, because of people like Coach May and his son. Look at following his footsteps. And I know that if I had a child there, I'd say, get out there and see if you can tackle somebody or something. Go do whatever he asks you to do.
We lost two good gentlemen. A good friend of mine, Jared Henry, and his brother Keith. And I hear you talk about your brother Don, and Jared was that way with his brother Keith. And they, of course, successful at Oneida, became successful coaches at Coalfield, took that team right up to the edge. Can you share just a word about because they were in proximity to you? They
lived across the street, and their dad, Dolphus Henry, was a veteran out of the Navy, wonderful guy, just do anything in the world he could for you. Grew up really poor in Robbins, just made something of himself. Their mother, Brenda, ran a beauty shop right there and fixed probably everybody's hair in town. And they're just wonderful people. And the two boys, they were like junior high when I was in high school. So they're really more in line age-wise with my sister, but gosh, it was their last name might as well have been Woods or mine been Henry. They were like family, you know. So admired them so much, and what they did at Cofield. I'm sure they did at Oneida before, but what they did at Cofield was the same thing was going on at Oneida. They restored that little community with such great pride, and they tough and win, and those people there would just do anything for them, and it was always, I can never think of, man, I'd go recruiting, I'd go by there where he had a player or not, so I could just see him, you know, and stuff, because they're just all about what's right, and they were all about what's good, and they cared for people and loved people. And what a tragedy with this COVID year. It couldn't have hit any family harder than it did them, you know. So I just, they were great to me. I lived across the street. My sister slept over there about as much as she did at our house, you know, and they just wonderful people that, you know, never knew anything about them before they moved there, and then would, here's my house, go check on anything you want, you know, just kind of trust them with anything.
And Coach, lastly, he's weaved in and out of many of your stories, but anything left about Robert Wright and Mr. Oneida, really, in a lot of ways?
Yeah, isn't he? You know, his dad, who was a fantastic man, has to be so proud of Robert. I am. You know, Robert, anything I accomplished, Robert topped just about. But the best thing he did, look at his family, look at his wife, look at his son, what a good coach his son is, his daughter, and they're just awesome family. And I don't have a better friend than Robert. There's not anybody that I respect, admire more. His heart is right, and he's about. If you can get around him, you'll be a better person, whatever you're doing. If you spend time with him, and he's always big everybody else, little him. He never brings attention to himself, yet we could never know what an impact he's had on people, especially in that community, I think.
Also, if you spend time with him, as I experienced a few weeks ago, be ready for a lot of interruptions from students past that come up, and when they come up, he stops and he's there for them, not out of disrespect for you, but out of respect and love.
Knows they're one of them. Yeah, I guarantee you. Yeah, who don't like Robert Wright? Anybody that knows him. Yeah.
Coach, thank you so much.
Thank you, man. It's been an honor. It's really honored me if y'all travel this way, and I'm so proud that we still got people like yourself in Oneida that's working and bringing it. It's good for that community, and it's a bit of honor. It's a great thing about athletics is it brings people together that you might not ever meet or know, and it's one of the great things about it. And this is really, truthfully, I'm embarrassed about how honored I am, about how y'all been and people will not have been to us and stuff. So I appreciate what's going on. I'm pulling hard for the Indians. I hope we continue to win as we always do. And I'm just really proud to say I'm just one of those that was in there, because there's thousands that's done wonderful things.